Hello, everyone. This is Mike Burek. I am a member of the advisory board of the U.S.-Ukraine Foundation, and I am also the organizer of today's two IT and tech panels about IT and tech in Ukraine. And it's a pleasure to be here with you. You know, very often we hear so many negative things about Ukraine, whether it's the war in the East, whether it's corruption, political scandals, and so forth. But I'm pleased to say that today we're going to be focusing on some very positive events and some very exciting things that have been happening in the IT and tech sectors in Ukraine. And just to give you a benchmark, I want to mention very briefly a report that was put out in February of this year by the National Bank of Ukraine. The Ukrainian IT industry grew over 20% last year in the depths of the COVID pandemic, which is pretty amazing. And for the first time, in terms of exports, it exceeded US dollars 5 billion. And at this point, the IT industry in Ukraine now accounts for 8.3% of total exports. If we look back 10 years, the IT industry was only 1.6% of Ukrainian exports. So you can see that this has been a five-fold increase since that period of time. In any event, we want to talk today about two aspects of IT and tech. First of all, I'm going to introduce Volodymyr Bandura, who is the CEO of a market research firm, Innolytics Group. And he and his panelists will be talking about IT and tech innovation and creativity in Ukraine. And then after that, Charles Whitehead, who is the co-founder of Aon Business Incubators, will be talking about nurturing tech startups. So at this point, I'd like to hand it over to you, Volodymyr.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for the introduction. We have very distinguished experts today on the panel. And let me briefly introduce, and then I'll tell some forward and give the word to other speakers. So first, Andrey Fisunenko. He is the CTO of Samsung R&D Institute in Ukraine. He has master's degree in theoretical physics and also a PhD in computer science. And for over 20 years, he was involved in multiple R&D projects and has a lot of success in that. Andrey Yavorsky, he is the vice president of GlobalLogic, one of the leading IT companies, international outsourcers. Over 30% of their staff is located in Ukraine. And just recently, they closed a very impressive deal. The company was sold for over $9.8 billion. So it's a great success for Ukrainian, actually companies which are a major part of which is located in Ukraine. And he will tell about their projects and about the competencies of our developers. And also we invited two partners from partner and associate from DLA Piper. It's the leading law company worldwide, and they have very strong office in Ukraine to speak about practical and tax aspects of cooperation with Ukrainian R&D companies and outsourcing companies. So I'm very excited to open this panel, and let's start. First of all, I would like to make a short presentation. We just recently did a very interesting report with DLA Piper on top 100 most valued patents registered with Ukrainian inventors abroad in many other countries. So let me share my screen and speak about that. Okay, do you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I think everybody agrees that the breakthroughs for countries and for businesses come from the innovation and new technologies. No question about that. The question is that it's quite difficult to explore practically the innovation potential and the achievements of specific country and developers of this country. So we did a number of reports. We published them in international media and in Ukrainian media about the innovation potential and achievements of Ukrainians. As you know, there is visible market. There are things which are presented on shows, press, conferences, and so on, and there is real competition. There are tens and tens of thousands of inventions which build this fabric of technologies. So, and if we are using specific data which we use for our research, such as patents, we can see not only the present moment, but also the future of the markets. For example, if we check the ACG, which was delivered by Apple in 2018, it was patented years before. You could see that they are moving in this direction. Now they're developing new stuff. So a lot of information is can be found only in patents. And very important for our research is, and for this specific topic, is that in a way, patent is a medal of a champion of the world, because you need to be to offer some novel idea globally to receive a patent. And for the research, it's good because it's well structured, so you can easily compare similar things, and you can structure by the subjects, by the topics, by the authors, and so on, and see the geography of interests of specific technologies and companies. And certainly patents have substantial value. So, for example, it can be very well seen in pharma, where companies can make billions of additional profit when they have a patent on their, let's say, product. So what we did several months ago, we searched over 150, we've identified 150,000 patents with Ukrainian authors, which were registered in over 100 countries. So we searched these jurisdictions. And we selected 4,800 patents, which were patented only abroad. And it's a very interesting category of patents, because usually these were inventions which were developed with big international companies, such as Samsung, which is present in our panel. So we did it together with DLA Piper and Advanter, and here are some of the results. Okay, so all this information is organized in interactive ways, so you can select any company you wish. You can check what patents were patented with Ukrainian authors with this company. For example, with Cypress Semiconductor, to which technical domains these patents belong. You can see the numbers, the valuation of these patents, the titles, and you can open them and check them in details. So you can also see the geography of interests and activity of our inventors. These, it's all related to top 100 patents of these 5,000 I've spoke about. The technology domains to which they relate. So you can select specific authors, see what technology domains he specializes in, and what inventions he patented abroad with specific authors and companies. So we also built a number of patent landscapes to show how the subjects how different subjects are developed by different companies. And what we found out that Ukrainian developers, they cooperate with some of the top and most innovative international corporations, such as BASF, Cisco, Google, Samsung, certainly, Sony, General Electric, and many others. For some of the companies, for example, Parade Technologies, which is a big company, over $80 billion in valuation, 1/3 of their patent portfolio was developed by Ukrainian authors. and I think it brought a lot of value to them. So it's strategic cooperation. Samsung has big R&D center here. They will speak about it. Star, Merck, many companies cooperate with Ukrainian authors. So the most active subject is, at least in the top 100, is computer technology, with these specific like sensors, measurement, and other details. The others are medical technology, digital communication, biotechnology. And as a conclusion of this introduction part, I would like to say that we see that Ukrainian R&D centers and developers, they really achieve very high international level, and they are interesting for top international corporations. So I'm excited with this development, and I think that we will improve, and other speakers will speak about the practical examples of what they develop here with Ukrainian engineers. And why I chose this picture for conclusion, because it was discovery even for me when we did our report, that a huge touch screen of Tesla, it was the chips for this new huge touch screen. They were developed by Ukrainian engineers, by some of the top inventors from our report. So I think it's also a good sign of their competencies. So thank you, and I would like to give the word to Andrey Fisunenko, CTO of R&D of Samsung R&D Institute in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Volodymyr. Thank you, Volodymyr, too, for introducing me, and I'm sharing my screen. Just a minute. And I'm sharing sound as well. First of all, many thanks for opportunity to reflect our experience during 12 years of innovating in Ukraine and sharing some insights and some probably practical recommendations for those who will step into the Ukrainian IT market someday. To create context for our operations in Ukraine, I just put a map to remind audience that Samsung Electronics has very developed global R&D network, and we are in Kiev since 2009, and we are one of 21 R&D centers globally. And to understand our driving forces and what is core factors influencing our strategy in Ukraine for innovations, I created kind of a mind map showing those aspects. First of all, there is global context, and our company has 5 core values claimed publicly, and one of those values is excellence. First of all, how it's understood in the context of company's business and global setting. If we talk about separate projects doing some R&D job, there are basically 2 options. First option is either to be like those 2 options are you should be either the world first or the world best when it comes about your deliverables, artifacts of your project and outputs of your project. From other hand, there is kind of cultural and structural philosophy of our R&D infrastructure. I could say it's a kind of orchestrated autonomy with unprecedented level of freedom for every separate R&D unit. And at the same time, it has kind of self-similar structure. Even scale is smaller than headquarters has. We inherit all functions, all basic functions of a mother organization. And those driving forces, I mean, the global driving forces lead to several sub-aspects. First of all, if we are talking about excellence, you should be super focused, be on the level of global competition. Second, you should care about your competency strengthening continuously. No chance to drop this activity at all. And you should be focused on not only on short-term business needs, like contributing to current companies' lineups and products, services, etc., but to be aware about where you will be maybe 2 years later, 3 years later, and even 5 years. And lastly, our R&D organization has a full R&D life cycle. This is kind of subsequences of self-similarity of R&D infrastructure, recursive nature. And we, due to that, we use several instruments, maybe some of them known for wide public, some of them are not conventional. Those are technology incubation, internal technology incubation, doing partnership with external entities, using open innovation model, and strengthening competency using open education models. Like short facts about our organization, since the inception time, Samsung has been invested in R&D in Ukraine, roughly around $365 million. Now our organization is like about 600 people, where R&D teams are around 450. Like it's floating number because we have different types of contracts, including temporary contracts. Our main contract time here is like important for this discussion probably, that we use regular employment dominantly, and we are fully legally compliant. So for doing specific researches, we have special hardware laboratories and high performance computing cluster for artificial intelligence R&D. So open innovation model leads to cooperation with universities and local IT companies. By the way, GlobalLogic was one of our partner some time ago. So as I mentioned, any Samsung R&D unit should be super focused, and those focal areas typically are selected and based on top of strength of local educational system, IT industry profile, etc. So many factors are taken into account. And at lunchtime, we selected a formula for profiling that we are focusing on mathematically and algorithmically intensive software and hardware research, mostly software research. And sub areas are like concrete areas are cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, in particular computer vision is core tech since the very beginning of our organization, and realistic graphics with applications for very tough footprints like mobile graphics, augmented reality devices, virtual reality devices. And since beginning of our patent activities, it was not right after creation of our organization, but some maybe couple years after inception. We applied for 232 patents. Among like we have grading system, valuation system internally, and 117 were highly graded, and we have internal process stimulating people who did a patent to reflect some of key points of research or development by publishing papers on top conferences and journals. And by the way, it increases probability of licensing and promoting patents. Interesting experience. And any organization trying to create a high-skilled and professional team in Ukraine will definitely meet several changes in this area in teaming. And we here is kind of top of iceberg. How we did it. One of major instrument it's open innovation activities. We tried a lot of partners through joint projects mechanisms and joint labs mechanism, creating smart classes and cooperating with professors, etc. And in some cases it was very productive, and we keep supporting this cooperation at the moment. Like total budget at the moment is around $1 million. And to team up our organization, we support constantly operating internship program. Depending on year, it may vary in numbers, but totally we mentored around 420 people, and 150 were hired eventually. So the big portion of our organization was taught and mentored internally, not by inviting some ready to join experts. And dual master degree and PhD programs is kind of pioneering activities. We were first in Ukraine who did this activity with Kyiv Polytechnic Institute and Shevchenko University. And basic idea is to save students time by combining education and work, while education is, theoretical and fundamental knowledge is compensated by practical activities correlating with those theoretical basics. And theses are selected among projects, among real world projects which students are involved in organization. Very effective mechanism for skilling up students up to ready to join to real project. And now I'm stop talking and I'll show some real world examples. First of all, reflecting our involvement with headquarters in developing graphics technology. If you are holding on hands Samsung device, probably and almost for sure you you have at hands our job results for creating first Vulkan middleware. It's kind of successor for OpenGL standard. This demo was shown on Samsung Developers Conference in 2016 for virtual reality application. And middleware and application for demonstration was created by our center. Second example is artificial intelligence based reduction of latency for SPAN-enabled devices.
But still, we received line, but it appears too slowly. It was a perceptive observation that gave us a real jolt. That kind of latency is created as the pen's signal is picked up by the handset, processed by the software, and then finally drawn on the screen. One of many solutions was the AI-based point prediction. We had our system analyze tens of millions of writing and drawing samples, much more than before. Based on this, the device predicts the next expected point of the S Pen. Since the predicted point should be closer to the real next point than the last point, the process can contribute to decreasing the latency. Also, thanks to a doubling of the display's refresh rate to 120 Hz, the Note 20 screen now shows the data from the S Pen twice as frequently as the Note 10. In the end, we reduced the latency to 9 milliseconds, moving the S Pen one step closer to the natural feeling of.
The next example is about supporting handwritten recognition on device for S Pen enabled devices like Note series and Galaxy Tabs. At the moment, we created infrastructure and support 85 languages.
This is not a smartphone as you know it. This is Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, the first to merge a pen with a phone. Galaxy Note is the power phone that forever changes how you work and play. Today's new normal demands a new device. So, we made one.
Can you all see the PowerPoint? Yeah.
Bringing first-of-its-kind innovation to mobile for a new way to collaborate. Except it's got a...
What do you need?
Here are some examples of how handwritten works. It can be standard input or write-in-place editing. Here an example. Our responsibility was like machine learning based solution and infrastructure for supporting many languages and scaling up applications. And Smart Trainer. It was announced at Consumer Electronics Show. This computer vision based technology enables kind of fitness coaching scenario for Samsung DTVs. Give some results, estimate, evaluate correctness of workouts, and hint user some useful information. And last example is our
360 vision monitoring system with only 4 cameras and deep learning algorithm Samsung has developed. It recognizes vehicle and pedestrians around the vehicle with high accuracy in real time, notifies driving situation to the driver.
All examples were in tight collaboration with global R&D units and of course with headquarters. So I'm done.
Thank you. Great presentation. I really enjoyed it, and it's like exciting for me to see what level of innovations is developed by your team here in Ukraine. Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah,
I have some questions.
Yeah, I have final comment, just a couple words. So, Samsung succeeded, and I hope others will do too.
Yes, we are sure, because we have other speakers who succeeded as well. So, yeah. Now, I would like to invite to speak Andrey Yavorsky. He is the Vice President of GlobalLogic, one of the leading IT companies, international IT companies, with very big office here in Ukraine with thousands of developers. And they have really impressive projects developed here in Ukraine. And let him speak for himself. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Volodymyr. Also, let me share slides. Hopefully they will be interactive. And yep, So first of all, I wanted to say a couple of words about the company. Many of you, I assume, are not familiar with it. GlobalLogic is a leader in digital product development. We help our clients to transform their business from analog to digital in these days. We also create new digital platforms as well as enhance products with a new functionality. In majority of our engagements, we actually assume full ownership. So from a client side, our engineers get a specification of what needs to be done, and basically they use their skills, motivation, knowledge to build what needs to be built. I think in an unfortunate situation with the COVID year that we had last year, ironically, for companies like us and for Ukraine, that was an area where many clients kind of turned their eyes back to Ukraine to see the talent and the capabilities and entrusted development of new products to those remote teams very successfully. As a company, we are altogether about 20,000 engineers across the globe, but Ukraine is I would say our largest software engineer hub. So close to 30-35% of our business is executed, delivered out of Ukraine. And as Volodymyr mentioned, to me, it's a great success that a company being acquired by Hitachi Group, which is roughly 80 billion in total revenue, and it will definitely boost engineering in Ukraine over the next few years, as we already see a pipeline of international business coming here. So as a company, we are, I would say, one of the top 3 on the market. So we have around 6,500 engineers, and that amount is growing. We also cooperate a lot with universities, and we believe that investment into the educational infrastructure is essential for the whole engineering ecosystem to exist and grow inside the country. I'm going to show you a couple of examples, actually 3 examples of products that we develop. And for each of the product, I decided to make a short overview of the market to give you a context of what we are doing. So not to bother you with the technology from the first side. So for each example, we'll first think about new reality trends, and then the problem which we solved over here with our engineers. So the first example is automotive industry. Overall, I do believe many of you, well, anybody who reads the news see lots of lots of different stuff happening in automotive, starting with Elon Musk announcing autonomous driving and all of the other automotive alliances trying to pick up and get up to speed and to create something like that. So essentially, in automotive industry, there are a couple of key trends. First, cars became electric, which is quite an interesting thing. So electric vehicles are rather, let's say, more autonomous than traditional ones. So you can equip them with different ways to power them up, so they can have a higher level of autonomy. Second one, they are less complex in service, and it means you basically have electrical motors and the battery. So it's also increased the level of autonomy and the duration of the service. And then cars became, as they became electric and they became more autonomous, they also became as a computer platforms. So on top of every car, you can do a lot of additional value services, like starting from basic things like network connectivity, some multimedia functionality, and ended up for the cars to be, as a platform where they communicate with each other, do, additional things like, for instance, sharing of vehicles, tracking of their usage. One of our clients, I'll talk about later, Volvo, also considers autonomous cars as in a way a replacement for the short-range aviation flights, as with a level of autonomy, you can basically do 3 to 4 or 5 hours car rides, basically doing fun thing instead of staying in lines in the airports. So all of that, all of that future caught many of automotive alliances completely unprepared. And basically, the cars, as you drive them today, are not ready for all of those nice things. First of all, they've been designed. The design of current cars have been built. Architecture of them have been like 15, 20 years ago. So, and they are not really prepared, for instance, for the things like over-the-air update, which you can see in Tesla, so that you can completely change the whole firmware on a car and install like a new functionality and handset and do things like that. And you can go to the next slide. So there are a couple of challenges. First of all, platforms were not ready. So essentially, for the traditional car, you cannot do remote service. You always need to visit dealership, and that's one of the security requirements. Number two, we all get used to digital gadgets, and we all want to see more digital cockpits, more multimedia in the cars, which was also a huge issue. Third one, user experience design. That's one of those things. You need to transition what you get used to see in your gadgets to the cars, so that things are as convenient as as they are with the phones. And in order to do that, you have to have quite a rapid prototyping and cycle and continuous deployments of those new updates as users give you feedback. Also, there are lots of security challenges with the connected in digital cars, and I believe, like many of you have heard different news saying that either Tesla was hacked or some other car was hacked, and things like that happening all the time. So that needs to be addressed in the future. And lastly, there are lots of challenges to implement next level of autonomy of the car, so it can drive on the road without risks to the cars, to the people, and be reliably safe, that regulatory authorities will approve all of that. So we work with a number of automotive alliances out of Ukraine, and so-called tier 1 suppliers. Those are suppliers who develop components which are later used in your car. So just for you to know, like if you're driving whatever model you are driving, Mercedes or Ford, under the hood you will see components from hundreds of different manufacturers. So we do stuff for them as well. Our expertise, so in automotive, it's actually interestingly was actually connected to my next slides about healthcare, as it is highly regulated product. So you cannot simply push a car on a road without extensive testing, lots of security measures and things like that. So we managed to build such a capabilities over here. And one of the interesting, I would say, projects within all of that, which we are developing for Volvo, is autonomous driving. And I've kind of picked up a couple of pictures from our test platforms. So for the autonomous driving situation was an interesting example how innovation happens over here. First of all, it all started due to the shortage of talented engineers in core locations of Volvo, including Sweden, where competition for the talent is extremely high and availability of talent is smaller. Also, when you look at IT and the IT sector, it usually amount of engineers which you have will normally be a proportion of the population, so that a certain amount of students decides to go to the maths or to the computer science degree, and basically the bigger country you have, the more engineers you have. In Ukraine, we have quite a unique situation when IT is very popular, I would say extremely, and the percentage of IT, of software engineers, is much higher to my feeling than in other countries. So the client, Volvo, what they saw that they have two solutions to solve that autonomous driving problem. One of them was to buy such a technology from someone, or build it by their own. So this is what they decided to do. They created small alliance and invested in the development of technology. So for that solution, we actually had to hire about 20 people with PhD degree. And Volvo was and still is very open for them to cross-share patents and work on on that technology. Also, when we talk about R&D, usually it's research and development. So in those projects which we develop for them, amount of research is enormous. So we basically are creating a new technology which then will be used rather than like using existing technology to apply it for a specific problem. Like on the screens that you see, for instance, for the car navigation, we are using both cameras, which is, I would say, left part of it, then lasers, then traditional radars, and high definition maps. So out of 3 sources, our engineers are trying to build a reliable model of external world where a car can navigate and dynamically react on a situation on the road, as well as get connected to other cars who drove through the roads before it, or like in different directions, so that the picture can be completed in a real time and well, essentially increase level of safety. So the product is planned to be released in a few years. I think that the COVID year actually hit all automotive industry quite heavily. Mostly, they had to stop their production, and due to that, well, many investments was put on hold. So, but hopefully we'll see the product on the road pretty soon. Once again, to summarize, for the decision to go to Ukraine was specifically driven for them due to the availability of talent, quite large amount of people with like PhD level degree and understanding of maths and computer modeling, and as well as access to their younger researchers who are eager to invest lots of money and energy to do those things, and our, let's say, proximity to universities where we can build those products. So hopefully, well, as I look at this, the whole project that we do over here, hopefully that we are able to import into Ukraine technologies, train our engineers, and in the future we'll have even more interesting products and more complex. The next one is healthcare. So obviously, the healthcare is one of the most conservative domains, as it needs to work with with the people, and typically adoption of new technology in healthcare isn't let's say they are not the first one who do that. They usually look at other industries and then decide what to do with that. However, there is a big pressure to from a patients to see those things. We all get we all like our gadgets. We all get used to instant access to our data, and majority of people expect things to be like that with healthcare. So, but it is not quite often. So there are a couple of obstacles for that. First, majority of medical devices which are on the market have been developed like 10, 15 years ago. Approval of medical device, specifically on a class level, which is class 3, class 2, those are devices which might hurt or seriously injure patient or even kill patient. It's like multi-year process with the clinical trials and all of those things. Well, all of you saw the situation with the COVID vaccination. So it had to pass like 12 months of testing, or any medical device will be subject to a similar regulation. And we've been developing medical devices in Ukraine for over 20 years and have a great expertise on that, certifications and all of those things. And what we are trying to do is to help our clients to move faster on innovation scale by improving their traditional products, adding digital infrastructure to them, and so on. One of the products I think I'm proud that we developed it, pretty impressive, is emergency care, basically cardiac defibrillator. I do believe most of you saw those things in movies, and hopefully you will not have to use it in your real life. Well, typically it is shown as a kind of pretty simplified device which applies current to the body, and then magically patient gets restored and better. But in reality, these days, emergency care is a much more complex system. So the device collects lots of data about heart rate, oxygen saturation, CO2, your pressure, temperature, basically a couple of other things. So the product which we create actually is a kind of so let's say we started with a product that was like a AED, so basically the defibrillator. Then we quickly realized that alone those devices are not as useful as connected. So then as a first step, which we did, we basically added networking functionality to every defibrillator, cloud functionality for all of them to upload the data to the cloud, and then make it available for the physicians to make immediate actions. Actually, there are about 400,000 heart attacks or situations related to those diseases in US alone over the year, and only 40% of people gets treatment in recommended timeline. So the timeline is about 90 minutes after that happens, before typically before the inevitable bad things happen to the organism. And the product which we are developing, and completely out of Ukraine, is actually gets connected all defibrillators of our clients to the cloud. We also maintain a remote cloud in it's actually 3 locations in a couple of years in Europe. So for the redundancy purposes, it is run 24/7 and implements functionality for the physicians to see what happens in real time, both video and see all of the data, so that when emergency team reach the patient, they don't need to wait for them to get carried to the hospital, and all necessary reanimation can start to happen in real time immediately. Later it was enhanced, so from that functionality, which is still quite complex, to the next level. So it became like an ecosystem of them. So we added like GPS tracking for all devices. We monitor their usage. We monitor their battery usage, and using artificial intelligence algorithms, we predict maintenance of those devices so that the battery is always at the right level, right capacity, and ready to do what needs to be done. Added, basically consultation functionality for the physician, so that they can see similar cases or add in real-time consultation to other professionals. So pretty impressive products, saves lives every day, but not many people know that it's actually the software have been engineered over here. And the third one, actually also the story about Industry 4.0. Also believe many of you have heard about that fourth industrial revolution, which happens today. It's basically a movement from analog traditional world into digital, and it affects all aspects of human lives. And one of the big big revolution which is happening today actually is happening in manufacturing and like various industrial setups. So the challenge which they face is that amount of equipment from different vendors and amount of software is kind of rapidly increasing over there. So one of our clients actually is I would say one of the top innovative startups in warehousing. What we develop with them is actually a product that completely automates warehouse. So there are literally the warehouse, which is supposed to be operated by 500 people, will be operated by 25. So those will work in the shifts simply to monitor how things happen. So automation is end to end. Essentially, the products that it's actually a warehouse pallet gets into the warehouse, then it's automatically unpacked by robots. You actually now you see the process that is actually palleted back. So basically product unpalleted by robots, put into the line, then it's been distributed, individual boxes by bots distributed across the warehouse. Also, once again, without people intrusion. And once the product is required for the delivery, they collect it back in the outbound zone, and robotic hands actually put them on a pallet, then pack it, and you're ready to go. So there are a couple of things which such warehouses solve economically. So basically cost of transition on the warehouse reduced by like 10 times. And so warehouse can be much smaller, so you don't need space for the people. There is no need for lights. They can work in aggressive environments like cold temperatures or overheated temperatures and things like that. You can put them in a, basically, you can put your logistics center somewhere in the middle of like Manhattan. So it will take, I mean, much smaller amount of time and you will have like instant delivery. And many of those things are pretty impressive product. I'm really proud that we developed over here. There was also, we had to hire quite lots of PhDs to do modeling of, how, for instance, how to build such a pallets when you have a products of a different weight. And for instance, there are certain rules like chemical products cannot be on top of like food and other things. But the most challenging to me and the most innovative, that's what we do, our engineers proposed and developed, is like a concept called digital twins, where you create a fully identical digital copy of all software, of all, simulation of your full complete like warehouse. And basically, and using that, you basically create some sort of like, like in a Matrix movie, but for the robots. They will work and operate within such a simulated environment, and that creates like amazing results to test new ideas, basically avoid expensive mistakes when you do such runs with the physical equipment, which could be broken. Volodymyr, that's it for me. I hope that was fun and entertaining.
Yes, thank you. Great projects. Really, really impressive. So I would like to, Andrey, thank you for sharing that. I think people will have questions, but really the level of your team and the level of your projects is very impressive. It's the top. And now I would like to invite to speak Illya Sverdlov. He's partner at DLA Piper, leading law company internationally and in Ukraine. He specializes in law. He has in tax, in taxation. He has great expertise in that, and I think he can comment on the practical aspects of cooperation with Ukrainian developers. Thank you and welcome.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I will also now share my my screen and presentation. I think continuing on all the speakers today, indeed, I think from legal side, for 10 years, starting from, I think, 2010, the IT industry has been growing steadily. We see a big inflow of clients which open R&D centers in Ukraine, US, Israel, EU, and other countries. And I think, of course, this is due to the, first of all, the level of our IT people and technical people that was mentioned already. And of course, one other thing which also contributed to quite unexpectedly maybe to the boom of this industry was simplified taxation system, which allowed private entrepreneurs and independent contractors to enjoy like 5% tax on their income. And of course, the companies and non-residents used this as an opportunity. Of course, for them it was beneficial, and it was also beneficial for IT specialists. Of course, using this simplified taxation system triggered a number of risks, like hidden employment risk, and for some companies, permanent establishment risks. And for 10 years, I mean, there has been a very active discussion on what to do with simplified taxation system. Was it to cancel it? There were several attempts to do that, but still, I think, I mean, the system survived because the government, I think, ultimately, under pressure of IT industry, also understood that the benefits which are attributable to the taxation systems, they actually outweigh potential budgetary concerns. But still, I think that this discussion goes on, and what I'm going to tell, I think that I will try to make it short in the interest of time, is a new initiative which is called DSCT DSCT draft law, which is actually aimed to kind of create some bridge between the existing system where private entrepreneurs are used and create some bridge to maybe pass on to other system. And actually, it is initiative directed at creating special IT regime which will work throughout whole country. It will not be linked to special territory in Ukraine. It will and should apply to all the countries, and both existing companies and newly created companies can use it. I will shortly describe what are the aims of the legislator and what is the process. So basically, Dia City, it's, I mean, in English, it can be translated as an action city, Ukrainian word Dia. And in March, there was a draft law which has been submitted to the parliament. And it envisages that the companies may become a residence of this Dia City, which may cover the whole territory of Ukraine. And the companies, in order to become the city, they need to perform qualified activities, which are mainly, which mainly could be described like as IT-related activities. It includes software engineering, video game publishing, I think artificial intelligence, etc., etc. It also implies that the companies which are residents must employ at least 9 individuals, or as they are called, geek specialist. It's a new term which is introduced by this law. I will later on tell what it means. There is also intention that the salaries of employees and geek specialists are at least 1,200 euros in Ukrainian currency equivalent per month. And also it envisages this earnings from the activities which are qualified make at least 90% of all earnings of these companies which are qualified to be residents of Dia City. Importantly, I mean, if the activities are not qualified, or if the percentage of non-qualified activities exceeds the mentioned threshold, the companies will lose its status as Dia City resident. How it will work? Actually, there will be a special body which will consider the application filed by to-be resident of the Dia City, and it will consider it based on the procedure which is and will be described in the law, and must give its answer yes or no within 10 days. So again, it's not by default. I mean, there should be a permission involved. Importantly, that the legal framework of Dia City introduces some legal benefits and also some tax benefits. From legal side, it envisages a new concept of gig contracts, which is a certain mix of services and employment agreement with a IT specialist. And I mean, it guarantees payment to this specialist and also provides some social guarantees to such specialists. And at the same time, there is no risk of so-called misclassification, reclassification, or hidden employment risk. So what are the advantages of such gig contracts? First of all, persons do not need to be registered as private entrepreneur. Such contracts can be concluded in electronic form, and there is more flexibility of the parties when defining their rights and obligations. Given that Ukraine is a country which unfortunately has a labor legislation of still Soviet socialist times, which is not flexible, to say the least, this is a certain new legal opportunity to be more flexible in defining relationship between the employer and employee. Also, under new law, unlike existing Ukrainian legislation, it will be allowed to conclude non-compete and non-solicitations agreement, which are now very problematic and require consent from anti-monopoly committee in certain cases. So this also will create additional flexibility and will be more attractive to companies which consider to become residents of DSCT. And coming from legal side to tax side, importantly, for residents of DSCT, there will be a special personal income tax regime, which will be comparable to the regime which is now enjoyed by simplified taxpayers, which is 5% so-called single tax. The law envisages that resident will have to withhold 5% of personal income tax and 1.5 military duty from the remuneration payable to gig specialists. That is really a competitive tax rate, even if we judge by the jurisdictions which are close to Ukraine and which have similar tax regimes. It does not make a swift shift from the existing 5% to ordinary tax rate of 18% personal income tax. And at the same time, it allows to enjoy both tax and legal benefits for residents of DSCT and is aimed at boosting international companies to set up R&D units in Ukraine, even at a, I would say, quicker pace as compared to now. In terms of corporate taxation of the DSCT residents, the companies will not pay ordinary corporate income tax, which is 18%. They will pay 9%, I would call it quasi-exit capital tax, which applies to certain type of payments, which actually can be classified as non-business related or payments which are in excess of market prices and which might result in outflow of funds in a tax efficient way from the residents of DSCT. So overall, I think that this regime, it should be a positive development for IT market. There are still discussions and active discussions going on in the parliaments and with the representatives of IT industry on how this law should look like. And there are still amendments being proposed, but I think that once it is adopted, again, it will and should make Ukraine even more attractive for R&D. Of course, purely from legal and tax side, I mean, we have all the necessary talents and great guys in the industry. So I think we should hope for the best and hope that this law will be passed very soon. And I think this concludes my remarks, and I will pass on to Volodymyr to further pass on to my colleague Ivan on another topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Are you with us? I would like to ask how much time we are left, because I think we are running to the end of our panel. We had extremely interesting presentations. And
unfortunately, we're out of time because the next panel has to come in. So I apologize to you, Ivan. You didn't have an opportunity to speak today.
No worries.
Yep.
Maybe maybe we'll have
maybe
another
we
chance.
have like a minute, Michael, or it's like totally out of
Oh, it's
time.
totally out because we need to get the next panel in.
Yeah.
We did have some questions which were answered in the Q&A area by the first two speakers, so that's been
Yeah.
covered.
Yeah, then let's sum up. I think if you are practically interested in cooperating with Ukrainian companies and you are interested in big projects, DLA definitely would help you, so you can contact them. I mean, unfortunately, Ivan had not enough time, but believe me, he's a great expert in this field, and you can contact them beyond, let's say, the time of this presentation, and he will be happy to communicate with you and answer your questions. So I would like to thank Michael for organization of such great and important event. And I would like to thank all the speakers. The presentations were really amazing. I'm glad that we have the experts at this level and the researchers at this level. And every time it's interesting, you know, to find out these new projects, because they are confidential. And, you know, even for myself, I discover new things. So thank everybody. And thank you, Michael.
Okay, great. And on behalf of the foundation, I want to thank you all. Take care now.